So hi everyone, thank you very much for watching or listening. Liam Hartley here today with another episode of Presenting Champions. And today I'm joined by a very special guest. It's prime time today, ladies and gentlemen. And the reason it's prime time is today we are joined by boxing legend Eddie Croft. Very kindly coming on the show today. Obviously, many fans will know he was the WBC Continental America's Super Bantamweight champion. Shared a ring with a who's who list of some of the best fighters in history, including obviously Eric Morales and Marco Antonio Barrera as well. There's quite a few other names on that list. He's transitioned post-boxing into coaching, into giving back to the new generation, which personally I've got all the respect in the world for when a top athlete does take the time to give back. So we're going to be talking about the highs and lows of his boxing career today, but as always with Presenting Champions, this is not just a sports interview. We're going to be getting into some of the deeper side of things as well. So, Champ, that's enough of me talking about you in third person. Sorry. Thank you very much for coming on the show today, and it's great to have you with us.
Thanks for having me, Liam.
No problem at all. As a very quick run through of some of your achievements there, obviously there's a lot more, including the world title fights. There's so many things, but we will touch on all of that as we sort of progress through this. Now, as I mentioned to you, I don't always run these interviews in linear time, so I'm going to actually start with the present day, some of the work you're doing now, training, coaching, and then actually work backwards in time. So it's a little different way of doing it. Obviously, a lot of people will know about some of the talent that you've produced and some of the work you're doing with your gym. Can you share with us a little bit about what you enjoy most about training, coaching, giving back, contributing to the development of the next generation? I know it's kind of an obvious question because it's something you do day to day, but as I mentioned, I think it's wonderful when people do that. So please share with us about what it means to you to see the talent that you train progressing to their potential.
Um, I've never really actually thought of it that way. The reason why is, boxing has just become something that it was my life, and I didn't know really after I was done fighting. I always knew prior to that I would be, training fighters or being involved in a fight game at some level. Um, but really training fighters and being in there with them and helping them achieve their goals and their dreams is what's definitely most satisfying for me. And just knowing that you're not so much like people say, well, you become like another father figure. Yeah, you are, but at the same time, there's stuff that at least I did. I tried to hide from my father, right? But your boxing coach knows so much about you, and they know what you're thinking and how you feel at a certain time, especially if they've done it before, right? So like I've gone through all the experiences that the people that I train are going through. So I have a good idea of what they're feeling at a particular moment. So, and because of that, I can help them through those times. If it's a tough time, if it's a good time, I can also try to help them, temper that down and tell them, hey, you know what, this might not last forever. So enjoy it now, keep training hard, and try to keep it going for as long as you can, because before you know it, it's going to be over.
Absolutely, that's some very wise words there, I have to say. I seem as we're starting off with some of your wisdom and some of the lessons you've learned through your journey. I'd like to take a moment to actually get your advice, or maybe, but there's probably too much advice that you could give in one go. But maybe if there were one or two essential ingredients that you could share with this, because when I release this interview, obviously it'll go around the world, the UK, Europe, the USA, all different places. So it's a good opportunity for some of your wisdom to sort of filter on down and hopefully reach some of the up and comers out there. I mean, one of the things I've read that you share a lot is about getting out of life what you put in and discipline being the key to success. I read that in an interview when I was researching for this. But if they were like maybe one or two things, somebody comes to you and they say, I want to do well in sports, I want to do well in boxing, I have a big dream I want to achieve. What would be one or two sort of key pieces of advice that you would say to those people in that situation? Big question.
Yeah, like you said, you might not be able to answer it in a short 1 or 2 sentence thing. Um, strictly boxing, right? If we're talking about boxing or athletics in general, but really boxing, the number one thing is you have to be in incredible condition, right? Because conditioning can trump a lot of things, like and can hide a lot of your flaws. So if you have technical flaws, you're not a hard puncher, or you don't have the greatest of chins, or whatever flaws you may have. If you have like the better conditioning on that particular night, there's a good chance that you could pull out a victory, right? So, that's one of the things that is I try to, not like overtrain the fighters, but you find that fine line between, what's too much and what's too difficult, to the point, you got to push them to the breaking point. And if during the camps, you figure out that if they're, okay, they're looking a little overtrained and a little sluggish now, then we'll pull back and kind of give them a few days of rest and recover. But you know there's like an old adage, you make the training so hard that the fights seem easy, right? And that's really true. Because if like I tell people, somebody can have all the talent in the world, but if they can only keep that up for a round or two, then forget it, right? So the number one thing really is being in condition and making sure that you're doing everything that you possibly can to come into fight night being physically prepared.
Absolutely. It's some very good wisdom, and I know obviously something like that. It's a massive question with your wealth of knowledge, your wealth of experience, and what have you. But at the same time, just to get a couple of sort of golden nuggets of wisdom is very very cool. So thank you for sharing that. Now I also have to ask you about some of your proudest moments as a coach, because obviously this is something you've been doing for a good few years, and obviously I followed that over time and everything, and I did some deeper research in it as well on the build up to this. But your proudest moments as a coach, I mean, is that something that we can hone down into one or two key moments? There might be too many moments to mention. I don't know, but it would be good just to get a feel for some of your personal highlights and the things that stand out to you as being your personal favorite moments as a coach, as a trainer, and everything like that.
um well, possibly maybe back in 2011, I believe. um in our local Golden Glove tournament, we had 10 boxers from our gym, and we ended up with 5 championships, and eight of the boxers went to the finals. So that really was a proud moment for me. um Also, when Melissa McMorrow, we went to Germany and she fought Susie Kentickin, who was undefeated at the time. And as a huge underdog, came out and won the WBO flyweight title. That was a big moment. Uh, and right now, I train a guy, Evgeny Shevchenko, who's he's ranked 8th in the IBF, at super middleweight. uh I've had a lot of proud moments, with him. Come the past 5 years, him, beating Najib Mohammadi. That was a big fight. Uh, even though like he was the favorite, just being able to he was sick, had the flu going into the fight, and was really able to go in there and win a unanimous decision, and just kind of not not with not 100%, right, not being able to show everything that he could do, but at the same time he came out with the clear victory, and I was very proud of him for that. So
Incredible. It's I love asking that question because obviously it's never the answer that you expect necessarily. It's it can usually be something quite different because you're the one in there day to day with them. So I love asking that. Thank you for sharing that so openly. I think we'll have a look back at your career and some of your some of your proudest moments and everything. And I think I'm going to follow on with that directly because you achieved a great deal. I mean, there's no two ways about it. You have a lot to be proud of. And really, I'm just going to ask you the same question about your career. When you look back on it now, and I know this is a big question as well, um, but I like asking big questions because obviously it opens up to things you never would have thought of otherwise. If you're too narrow with it, you could miss something. So when
yeah.
you reflect on your career now, you've had a good few years to reflect on it. What are the moments that you are most proud of, the moments that are the most special to you, whether it's a particular fight, whether it's somewhere the boxing took you, whether it's something, it's a broad question because it might not just be a win. I mean, it might be something, it might be like when you got in the ring one time and there were all sorts of things going on in your life, but you won anyway. I mean, this question, it can take many forms, which is why it's cool. But in your own words, what are your proudest moments of your boxing career, please, Champ?
That well, the proudest, the thing that I'm most proud of is that that I was able to, fight for a world title 3 times, and um, really fight some of the legends of the sport without much of an amateur background, right?
Mm.
So I grew up in karate, and I didn't start boxing until I was 17. Um, and I only had 35 amateur fights, and I turned pro with no promoter behind me. I didn't have a top rank, and at the time Don King was the other big promoter in the US. I didn't Main Event um, was a pretty big one at the time too, because they had Whitaker and Taylor and Evander Holyfield. um, so I didn't have a promoter with regular TV dates behind me. We just kind of like bootstrapped everything. I fought in club shows and in the San Francisco Bay Area here, and just kind of climbed through the club shows and made a name for myself that way. I was lucky that my manager was friends with Carl Moretti. So I was able to get on, some ESPN top ranked shows every once in a while. I more than once in a while, I should say. I think I fought on ESPN 5 times, which gave me national exposure, and that kind of catapulted me into being able to crack into the rankings and everything, and people being able to see how good I was, even though I didn't have the amateur background that most of the high level boxers have. So
Mm.
looking back on it, I'm proud of that. I do feel like I left a lot on the table. So sometimes, it's hard for me because I didn't win a world championship. Like, it's hard for me to to look at it like, my boxing career was a successful one. Although I feel, I did a lot more than many boxers do. I still feel like I, there is more in me, and which is another reason why I love coaching so much, because hey, like, I didn't get to do it. I didn't get to the level that I feel like I had the ability to get to, but I'm going to do everything I can to help the boxers that I train now get to that level.
Absolutely, absolutely. But I mean, it's one of those things where you can take those lessons, the things you did right, and the things that you look back on and think, maybe they should have been different. You can use all of that in a positive way for the new generation coming through, which is fantastic. I mean, yeah, from the outside looking in, you have a lot to be proud of. But I also respect the brutal honesty, because it's always like that when you're looking at your own life. So that's pretty cool. When you obviously you came up the hard way, and we were just talking about that, and you sort of made a name for yourself without this major backing and what have you. What were when you say that you didn't live up to your own expectations or whatever? What do you think were the factors in that? Because I mean, I don't. I mean, personally, I don't look at it that way. I look at like even fighting for a world title, even getting to that level is an achievement in itself. That's a personal view, but obviously I've never been in that situation, so it's different when you're actually there. So I look at the positive side. But obviously, as soon as you've been brutally honest about it, I don't want to dwell on anything negative. It's just that I feel that there might be lessons there that you could share with us. I mean, what are your perspectives now when you look back on maybe one or two things that you would change if you had that time again, type of thing? If you don't mind me asking this.
Yeah, no problem. So I like trained when and I was fighting and training, in the early mid '90s, and just things were different. We just didn't, have the same knowledge that that we have now. So like, getting ready for fights, I sparred all the time. I sparred 6 days a week. I probably, I, I have like so. Let me go back a little bit. So getting ready for my first world title shot, I was going to fight Tom Johnson for the IBF featherweight title, and I was sparring. I had really tough sparring partners, and I got hit, and then I got this eye injury. So like all the title fights that I had, basically I was fighting with a little handicap with one eye, and you just could. It wasn't visible at the time. Over the course of the years, this eyelid started to droop more and more. But at the time, nobody knew, nobody could tell. I could tell. It affected my depth perception and the way, that my vision was. So like, I just wasn't the same fighter anymore, right? So leading into my title fight, just my is like, here's my chance to achieve the goals that I set for myself, and then I come down with this injury, and just was never the same again. um so I mean, that's one of the lessons that I learned. I probably would really like kind of take a step back and listen to the fighters. Hey, you have an injury, do you have something bothering you? Maybe if the sparring is too tough, because you know what the, you want to use sparring for to work on your game plan and sharpen up your skills, as opposed to, you don't need all out wars all the time, right? You do need them sometimes, just to kind of like get you right mentally and prepare you for that in case the fight turns out that way. uh, but you just don't need that every day. And because like I came up in a gym, like, so I came out, I started boxing in this place called Newman's Gym in San Francisco. It's like in the Tenderloin, and the most depressed neighborhood of San Francisco. And it was like everybody was in there clawing and scratching just to survive, right? So every time you sparred, it was like life or death, right? So I sparred like that every day, all the time, right? And it now I I try not, try to have the boxers kind of work on more technical aspects of the game instead of always like going out there and all out war all the time. So that's definitely one thing. And like from along with that, I mean, that's pretty, that just being able to be connected to the boxers, and always, if there's something bothering them, um, even if it's outside the ring, and I can tell that they're not completely focused in training, uh, just that we can talk about it and have open lines of communication and try to figure it out. So, because you have to be completely focused on what you're doing in there, because you could. The thing about boxing is you can get hit with one good punch and get knocked out and never wake up again. So if you're not focused, then the chances of that increase exponentially, right? So we try to make sure that we have open lines of communication and everybody is on the same page, and that they can go in there, you know 100% ready, mentally, physically, spiritually, even, right? You go into battle, and you're ready to go.
Absolutely. Well, there's some good lessons there. I mean, brutally honest again. It's interesting that you mentioned about the sparring and some of those things as well, because I've heard that a lot from, top fighters and top champions I interview of basically your generation and of that era where, there seemed to be a different mentality to the sparring and the training to some degree. Obviously, you've been around boxing for many years and you've seen the changes from obviously your time competing, which we will get to more in a few other things. But also, I'd like to basically pick your brains a little bit on some of the changes you've seen in boxing, good and bad. And this is a very big question. And with this, I'm talking more, not so much about the promotional aspects and the streaming and some of that stuff, but more about the training aspect and the development aspect. Because one of the things is, well, you touched on this yourself. There's a different mentality now to sparring, to what it's used for, to different things with training. So a lot of people focus on negative things of some of the best don't fight the best, some things, okay, that some of that's true, but there's bound to be some good changes as well. So looking at this 50-50, because it's sort of a glass half empty, glass half full, which one is it? Well, it's both. I mean, they're both there, just which one you look at. So in your
Right.
own view, what are some of the good things that you've seen change in boxing in your time in the sport, and what are some of your less favorite things that you don't like? It would be good to get that sort of weighing scale. It's a very big question, so we can't cover the whole sport. I'm just talking about some of the primary things that you personally have seen that mean the most to you for the good and for the bad, if you get what I mean with this one.
No problem. Yeah, yeah. No, you know what? I'll give you one thing. And it's both good and bad, right? And so when I started fighting, the internet was in its infancy, and right, so like, people didn't really have emails or anything. So when I actually first started fighting, there was no internet, but near the end of my career, internet had just started, right? They still had like AOL, and you've got mail. So that was like that was in the very at the end of my boxing career, that was kind of the newest thing. So with like the advent of YouTube, and people being able to research fighters, right? People just don't take fights anymore, right? So like, you go, okay, well, you're trying to make a fight, and people are like, hey, let me see a video. You got videos? Okay, well, give me the guy's name. I'm researching. They see one clip of the guy where, like, the guy might look a little sharper than they want, right? And so, they turn the fight down. So like a lot of fights, even early, right? They don't, they just don't get made. And so people kind of stall on their careers in the beginning because they don't want to fight guys that are too tough. Right. So that, I think, is a negative. But at the same time, what the internet has done, and social media and YouTube in particular, has really like empowered people, And so like the thing about boxing is you make money if you could put people in the seats, right? So if you can sell tickets, and get people to watch, or buy pay-per-views, then you're going to make money. And that's why people now complain about guys like Jake Paul, or all these social media influencers that are fighting. Yeah, it's a farce. Yeah, I agree, but at the same time, they are able to put money, put people in the seats. They sell tickets. And since they do that, they deserve the money that they get. Now, do I look at them as serious fighters? No. I don't think he's, a serious threat to any champion, but at the same time, he's selling more tickets than some of the champions, so he should get paid more than the champions, right? That's kind of how it is in a free market enterprise, or or free, is that right? Free enterprise market, one of those. But, that's I mean, so I like the empowerment of that fighters have nowadays. If you can build like a social media following, then you can kind of call more of your own shots than you could when I was fighting.
Yeah.
So it's a double-edged sword there, right? Like, so there's some good aspects of it and some bad aspects of it.
Yeah, it's very cool to get your insight on that because I mean, first of all, yeah, I agree. I mean, in terms of watching those guys as serious fighters, no, but I also understand how to get there. So from a business side, it makes sense. But yeah, I mean, I like the double-edged sword. I like what you're saying. In a way, a lot of fighters can have more control over their careers. They can have more control over where they go to put more of the power in their hands. How they use it. It's cool. It's very cool to get your insight because, to be quite honest, you have one of the best sort of boxing brains out there, in my opinion, in terms of your knowledge, your technical knowledge, your training, coaching, the time you've been around the sport. I personally believe that, and I mean that as a sincere compliment. And the thing is, I don't know if you always get the recognition for that. So, I mean, I'm in my 20s, right? So I'm around boxing in the UK. I work with quite a few champions over here in the media side, like doing their photos and doing interviews and doing their media journalism. But like because you've been over the sport for like such a span of time, you've seen these shifts, and it's really cool to get like a deeper insight into that. So all I can say is thanks for that one. I mean, it's very very cool.
Thank you, Lim. I appreciate that. You know what? I have felt like that I'm boxing's best kept secret for many years, right? So and I, for the past few years, I felt like, okay, this is the year I'm going to break through. This is the year I'm going to break through. But that's the thing about boxing. It's like a lifelong journey, and you just grind. And so let me tell you a funny story. I remember my first amateur fight, right? And going in and getting my hands wrapped, and I'm looking around and seeing, all the older guys, so I'm, eight, I think I just turned 18. And, you see guys, gray hairs and their faces all smashed up and crooked and stuff. And, you know, 40 years later, that's me. I'm one of the older guys with the crooked face, and so like, um, it, it's it's been a long journey, and it's still, I don't even think I'm at the halfway point yet. Hopefully one day, Eddie, my name, Eddie Croft, will be sometimes confused with Eddie Futch. Will be the two Eddies that trained a bunch of world champions, and you know basically died doing what we loved. So that it's another dream of mine to be able to go over on that side of the pond and have a fight in one of those big stadiums. I like the energy in those stadiums is just like unmatched, in my opinion. Like that's a dream of mine, is to have like a fighter go over there and fight a champion in like Wembley or the O2 or something like that. That would be pretty exciting for me.
Yeah, that would be awesome. And I mean, obviously, we hope to have you one day. It is a great energy. I'm used to it. I mean, it is a different energy than the US. I mean, I don't know personally if it's better or worse. I mean, there's things that are different. Like obviously here the fans and there's the singing and there's all
Yeah,
that side of things which you don't have so much. And obviously even with things like say Ricky Hatton or somebody like that coming over and bringing fans with him and the singing. Um, People in the US, the response to it was quite cool actually. But there's things like that. I mean, it's a different type of energy. It depends on what you like. I mean, fans in the US are very good in different ways. So it's like what you say, it's a two-edged sword. But it'd be great to have you over here. So fingers crossed one day. I believe
one day.
that'll happen. And yeah, I mean, as for being the best kept secret. I mean, it is true, but at the same time, what you said about enjoying the process and doing what you love every day, I mean, that's a very important life lesson because people are so focused on the end result of, I want to win this title or I want to. I mean, even with myself, like with what I'm doing with these interviews, it was meant to be a temporary thing a few years ago, and by popular demand, it kept growing, and we're on like 300,000 global views and stuff. But I was never thinking about that, like, oh man, I want to get to that. I was just thinking, I just love talking to people who've achieved great things. And in whatever you do in life, whether it's boxing or something else, I really think that just enjoying the process, getting better each day, then you look back and you think, wow, actually, I've come a long way, and it's a really cool thing you've shared there for like any. I mean, that's not a question, but just saying, it's really cool that you shared that because it is very important. Let's talk about that a little bit. I mean, your future plans, your future dreams with the sport. You say about coming to over to Wembley and things like that. You say about going down in history, like Eddie Futch and some of those great guys. I mean, is that I know we're saying about enjoying the process, but if we look at the long term, is that sort of thing your aim, your goal now is to be sort of the best trainer you can be and that type of thing?
Yeah, oh, yeah, absolutely. That's yeah, I would love to be able to train multiple world champions and become trainer of the year, voted trainer of the year one year. And just like little ego fueling things like that. But yeah, yeah, I don't think that it will, make me feel like I've made it, or if I it or it wouldn't make me feel any less of a trainer if those things didn't happen. Um, I've been all over the world, for with boxing. Been, like I spent a lot of time in Germany, been to Denmark, Vietnam, Mexico a bunch of times, um, Switzerland, Russia. So like, it boxing kind of takes you all over the world if you're good enough, right? You don't get to go to all those places if you're not good. That's the thing. You kind of stay in your area. If you're not a good fighter or a good trainer, you end up staying in your area and you don't ever leave. Right? So if you're good enough, you get a chance to get on planes and go all over the world. And so I've done that so far. Now, I want to get to be like, like where guys, come to the gym to take pictures with me. Like, hey, there's Eddie Croft. That'd be fun.
Yeah. Well, I believe you'll get there. Keep, as you said earlier on, keep grinding and keep believing, and you'll get there. And as for the travel side of things, I mean, yeah, totally. It's that funny enough. That was a question I did have for you, which we've answered it. But I have come across that boxing's taking you to some very cool places. That's also inspirational for the up and comers out there as well. That's another thing because it can take you around the world. I mean, that's a real perk.
Yeah.
So it's good that we shared that actually. So okay, so moving on into a couple of other things in your career now. One of the things that I have to ask you about that never mind other fighters or trainers watching this, but just boxing fans now will love and want to hear about. Obviously, as I mentioned at the beginning, you fought Eric, you fought Marco, those two legends of the game. Basically, if we were to do a comparison of those two guys, it'd just be cool to get your thoughts on this. As a fun question. If one was better than the other, who hit harder, whatever you want to share about it, But it's just, I know you've talked about this in other interviews, but I still think
Mhm.
it's going to be just a fun question for boxing fans. That if I don't put this in, I'm going to get loads of comments saying, "Why didn't you ask him about that, about those guys?" So let's,
Right.
what are your thoughts on that side of things?
Okay. Well, in my opinion, I, for some reason, Eric Morales hates me already. Anyways, I don't know why, but uh, you know what? In my opinion, like Barrera was the much better of the two. Um, but so I fought Barrera when I was much younger.
Hmm.
Let's see, how old was I? I was like 26 or 27 when we fought. And when I fought Morales, I was 32 and I hadn't trained in a long time. They like called me and I was sitting on the couch at that point, right? I was not even training anymore. Um, but I remember, going in when I fought Barrera, just like, getting into the ring and looking up and just feeling how hot the TV lights were because it was a pay-per-view show. It was actually we were on the undercard of Bo Holyfield 3, right? So it's a huge show. We're the semi-main event to, the heavyweight title of the world, heavyweight championship of the world. And it was on HBO pay-per-view, and you look up and you see HBO Sports, and that's when you're at like the highest level of boxing, right? And the TV lights must have felt like it was 100 degrees. It just felt like your skin is starting to like bubble under there, right? And you know I'm looking around and you see all these stars. You see, I like at least, US film stars, right? So I, saw Goldie Hawn and Kurt Russell. And you look to my left, there was Magic Johnson, and there's just like all these stars. And I was like, man, this is big time, right? And so I just remember, and I tell people this all the time. When Barrera hit me, I had never been hit like that, right? And he hit me, it was like boom, and my ears were ringing. All I could hear was wrong, and I was like, man, like I had never been hit like that before. And I like I said, I was, injured at the time, and in my younger days, I would, I'd always say if I wasn't injured and I had two eyes, I could have beat him. And like looking back at it, he's an all-time great. I don't know if I would have beat him. I definitely felt like it would have been a close fight, because it wasn't close at all. But it would have been a close fight if I was 100%. But you know also in the same vein, if I was 100%, I feel like I could have beat Eric Morales. It was just the right style for me, he was the right style. And I just to kind of put it in perspective, uh like I said, I hadn't really fought or trained or anything and smoked a couple packs of cigarettes a day. And I get into the ring, in Mexico City, and this is I think 2002, 2003. I don't really remember. I gotta look at box stuff. But you know, Eric Eric hit me like the first punch he threw. He hit me. It was a jab, boom. And it kind of like stunned me a little bit. And I was like, all right. I remember now. It kind of like the old feelings come back. I go, okay. And I got the length of his jab, the timing, the speed of it. It did stun me, but he's not hit me with that again. And he threw a couple other punches, and I made him miss, made him miss, made him miss. And it just like kind of came to me, and I was like, "Hey, let me throw a punch now!" Bam! And I hit him, and it was easy. And I was like, this is way too easy," And so I actually won the first round. I walk back and I'm exhausted at that point, just I hadn't trained in years, and we're fighting in Mexico City at high elevation. So by that time I was done, but I felt like if I was at 100%, if I win the first round without like, this is the champ of the world, and I haven't fought in a long time. um I just felt like he was the right style for me, so I always thought that I could have beat him if I was 100%. And Barrera was the much harder of the two. He punched way harder.
Very cool. It's very cool to get your insights on that. Obviously, I've seen the fights and everything, but hearing about it from your point of view in the ring is amazing. You mentioned something there as well, that I think is interesting. You mentioned about the year and saying, what year was and everything. Um, Off the top of my head, I can't remember either. So I don't think it's all about being too many punches. But seriously, joking aside, do you have many health effects from boxing now? I mean, obviously you mentioned the eye, and that's one thing. But like, you seem sharp as a razor, and very happy and enjoying life, and that's really nice to see that, not only have you got out of boxing with success and everything, and transitioned into the coaching side of things, but basically at face value, I mean, you seem to be enjoying life and happy and healthy and everything, which is great to see. Is there much sort of wear? I mean, besides the eye, obviously, is there much sort of wear and
Well,
tear on you, if you don't mind me asking that?
I don't believe so. I don't believe so. Other than my eye injury, which became a permanent thing. And I don't know if they can never figure it out, right? So I went to a bunch of doctors; they can't tell. So I don't know if the eye injury is something that's neurological, or they just don't know. Or they could never tell me, right? I don't feel like I don't feel like I'm any dumber than I was before, or let me rephrase that. I don't feel like I'm any less smart than I was, or any less, of course, with age, you're not as sharp as you were when you're younger. So, like, I have a tendency to forget some things that I would have never forgotten when I was younger. Um, I think that's more of a factor of age than boxing. Um, I don't, I had never been unconscious, or I got my bell rung. Yeah, I don't know, hundreds of times, but I have no, like, you know I don't have a big problem with slurred speech or anything like that. When I'm tired, I'll slur a little bit, but I don't feel like I have lost too much in the way of mental capacity, um, because of boxing.
No, not at all. I mean, it doesn't seem that way at all. Like I say, I hope you don't mind me asking. It's something that people are curious about, because I mean, as well, I think there's more awareness with this now, with some of the health effects than there was maybe even a few years ago. But yeah, I mean, you seem sharp as anything. Personally, I believe age is just a number, man. I mean, I know you said about age. Age is just a number. I mean, it's not really age. It's like experience, life experience, good experiences, bad experiences, and how they grow you as a person, like positively or negatively or whatever. But like, actual age, I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's like, I really think it's just a number, and I'm not just saying that. I mean, it's one of those things where, if you, like yourself, right, you have a very positive energy, and like a lot of, I know that might sound a bit strange, but like, when you meet people and you just get a vibe, you have like a good vibe, like an easy to talk to, and you've got a lot of like passion for what you do and things like that. Whereas obviously you see some people and um, they're like weighed down and miserable, and all the things that have happened to them in life, they've gone on top of them, and all that, or they've let them get on top of them. Whereas like, I think a lot of it's just positive attitude, and I don't know, if that makes any sense. I mean, you just have that great.
I
Great.
do. I hear what you're saying, and like I always tell people, no use complaining. Complaining doesn't do any, doesn't do you any good. It doesn't change anything. You want things to change, you got to figure out how to change it, right? You can make a plan and do it. Uh, and for the next part, when age is just a number. When you're 53 years old, Liam, you then you like let me know that if you still think it's a number.
I will. I will. I'll let you know. Um, that time, you know. But I mean, I don't know. I don't know what to say, and I don't want you to think there's any false compliments because I'm honestly being 100% honest here. But you don't seem um the age that you are. I mean, you still have like a youthful I don't know, like a zest for life type of thing. And I promise I'm not being corny with this. I'm just saying it how it is because, especially in boxing as well. I mean, a lot of people do have the health complications. A lot of people are quite sort of almost a bit grizzly or something. After a good few
Yeah.
years in the game and everything like that. But you still have the passion for what you do, and I think that's the most important thing. And it's I don't know, it's just something I feel, and it's a nice honest to God thing. But I will let you know when I get there. In the meantime, the last couple of things because actually the time's gone really quick. To be honest, it's really flown by. So the last couple of things to touch on. One question I want to ask you during your career, this is sort of another looking back question. When you were on a build up to a big fight, obviously we've touched on your training to some degree. I know we haven't gone in depth, but we've touched on that. The mental side of it, though, when you were on the build up to a big fight and everything, and it comes down to handling like I don't know if you felt pressure. I don't know if you got nervous or if you were excited about each fight that happened or whatever. But there's like the normal spectrum of emotions that people go through. Obviously, you love boxing. I mean that shows. But basically, how did you handle or what was going through your mind on the build up to a big fight during your career? Because I ask this because it's something that people just don't see. I mean, people who are in camp, other people around you will see this, but your average person watching a fight, I mean, they've got no idea. And I think that people can take this lesson that's going to come out with this and you can apply it to anything if you want to get a different job, if you want to pass an exam, if you want to do anything that involves a degree of pressure, they can use this.
Right.
So that's my reason for asking. So yeah, how would you do that? How would you stay cool, basically?
I like so it's like many people will say, I'm also a firm believer in, positive thoughts and affirmations and visualization, right? Um, so, if I had even leading up to, Barrera when, fighting him and I knew that, I'm going in there with one eye, but I still like would visualize, okay, he's going to do this and I'm going to do that. Right. And so I, there's one thing that I say to all the boxers, starting from their very first fight when they're an amateur, they can hop in and, like when we're warming up and getting ready to go, walk to make the ring walk, I tell them, I go, hey, look, this guy's got a left hand and a right hand just like you. If he throws the left, you know what to do. If he throws the right, you know what to do. Okay. So it's not going to be any different than any time you spent in the gym. Right. So, I generally would take that attitude, but also there'd be more detail with it, right? So, if you threw the jab, I get the timing on it and start slipping it and figuring out how to counter it and take that jab away from him. He starts like feinting the jab and tries to come with the hook or go to the body. I try to figure out how to take that away from him and counter those things. So I would visualize what I was going to try to do and what the rounds were going to look like, going through a 12 round fight, you know, I would probably, do that a few times a day, right? Until, and the thing is, there are days people are going to like, really, but there were days where like, if I was having a bad day, I just couldn't, I wouldn't be able to come up with the correct solutions, or I might even like lose in my visualization sometimes. But most of the time I could like turn that around and keep practicing, meditating. It becomes like a meditative practice. I'm not actually meditating, right? But it's like a meditative practice, and I visualize the fight until I finally win it. And when I'm, and then once I've won, then I can put it away and save it for the next day. But that's kind of how I got through, all the nerves, and kind of calm myself down all the time. And I like, and I also have, like back then I used to be an avid reader. So like, I would just read a lot and kind of like, take my mind off. If I didn't feel like visualizing and going through the fight at that time, I would just pick up some books and just start reading, and just kind of like try to put my mind in another space for that particular moment. So I didn't I didn't have there are some fighters that are really high strung, right? They just can't get it out of their mind. They can't get the fight out of their mind. Either they can't wait for it to happen, or they're like nervous all the time. And I'm kind of a laid back kind of guy. I'm a California kid. I'm like, laid back, and life's gonna happen how it happens. And so usually it happens in a good way for me.
Absolutely. See, there it is. That's what I was talking about earlier with like the positive energy or something. I knew there had to be a reason for that somewhere. So that makes total sense. But yeah, I mean the visualization and everything is a very important, very very important tip, and um, I've used that in my own life on a smaller scale. But it's amazing how many people have reached like those sort of dizzy heights as yourself, that they share those exact same things. It seems to be almost a bit of like a bit of a staple, and I mean that in a good way because it's something that's very
Yeah.
very important for people to pick up on. Like I say, in any life area as well. I mean, it doesn't have to be boxing. You can apply that to anything that's important to you. Well, champ, we've covered a lot, and I tell you what, it's been nearly an hour, and it's gone by really fast. So really, I just the last thing I'd like to say is if you just have any words, this is the last question for your fans, your supporters, or anyone around the world who continues to follow your boxing journey. Obviously, the people in your area know you. It would seem. I see you said hello to a few people as well as we've been talking. But in terms of people further afield, like if you get messages on social media or anything like that, um, I'd like to give a shout out to those people. To be honest, if there's anything you'd
Okay.
say to your supporters, and then that's pretty much it. To be honest.
Yeah. I'll tell you what. If if anybody knows, like any fighters like over over there in Europe, or England, and that wants to try out like someone different, someone new, and they're looking for a trainer, I would love to train somebody from over there. So you know, give me a call if you ever hear of anybody that's looking for somebody.
I will do. I will do. Well, obviously, you've given that a shout out here, but as well, if I ever hear somebody like that, I will do because obviously you know how it goes. I mean, people switch trainers up and change
Yeah.
around quite often actually. So I know some guys who've been with the same trainer for like 10 years. I know other guys who've been through maybe three, four, five trainers in that time. So but when people are switching for the right reasons, then definitely I would be happy to put them in touch. And anyone out there who's heard that, you know where to go. I mean, obviously Eddie's on social media and everything. He's not a hard man to find. So yeah, definitely reach out to him. Um, that's for our audience. But yeah, champ, it's been a real pleasure. It's been one of those things where basically you've been an open book. I mean, that's the only way I can put it, and I appreciate that
No
because we've got
problem.
into things hopefully a little bit different as well to some interviews out there, which is what I aim for. Because if I'm going to go to the trouble of doing these, it's always an honor to talk to great people, but I always try and give a little something back as well that people can learn from and grow from. And I think we've really done that today. But also it's been great fun to hear about, you know, the highs and lows of your life, basically, in simple terms. So thank you for your time once again. Enjoy the rest of your day because we've got a lot more of it to go. As I mentioned,
I just started.
yeah, and I'm just finishing. But you know, so it's funny, like the whole time zone thing is absolutely wild. But yeah, enjoy it. Thank you again. Thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe to the Simply Inspired YouTube channel, and there'll be more videos coming soon.